our third record, Love Machine, that was nominated for Hard Rock Group of the Year, and we lost to Rush. I don't care how good looking you are, how great you're playing. If you're an asshole, I'm not going to play with you.
You were in a band with the lead singer of Bo Nasty.
One guy that caught my ear was Michael Wagner. So, for those of you who don't know, Michael Wagner went on to produce Skid Row and Extreme and, Endless. He's a legend. He's sold hundreds of millions of records. The night record came out in 91, I believe. And then
Yep.
by 92, year later, it's like it was evident, well, this is when grunge is just starting to come out. It's like,
Yep.
I don't know, guys. It's not looking good. We're kind of at a standstill here. So the band broke up.
Gerry McGhee passed away from cancer on August 25th, 2020.
By the time he found out, roughly 8 months later, he passed away, sadly. And it's been 5 years, and I still can't believe it. I'll have dreams where, we're doing a Brighton Rock show, and Gerry's there. And my sole concern right now is the Storm Force. Brighton Rock's no more.
Okay.
I mean, there's nobody that could replace Gerry. I wouldn't change a thing. The best years of my life, that's for sure.
Hey, today I am thrilled to sit down with Greg Fraser, the powerhouse guitarist who has played with Helix, fronted his own band Phrase Gang, and now leads the charge with Storm Force. And yes, he is a founding member of Canadian hard rock legends Brighton Rock. Greg Fraser, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guru.
Hey, and no, he is not in Canada, obviously. So he is in Puerto Vallarta on vacation. I'm jealous as shit. So
yeah, just stopped in to chill for a little bit.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's great to have you on. I'm in North Dakota. You're from Canada, so basically, North Dakota is like Canada's. We're like the bastard stepchildren of Canada. So, but
I think you're south of Winnipeg.
That's right, south of Winnipeg. Yep. So, talking about your career, and I want to get into the Brighton Rock, and I want to get into what you're doing now with your last project, Storm Force. But I'd like to, how did you know when you were younger, like that music was gonna be your thing? Like, when did you realize that?
Well, my father was a pretty. I was born in a city called Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Northern Ontario, and my father he had his own radio show, TV show back in the day. So right from day one, I was surrounded by music. He was on the radio ever since I could learning how to walk. So I was surrounded by music, and I really connected with music. And then once I started to get around 8, 9, 10 years old, I started watching the Partridge Family and stuff like that. And I wanted to be like David Cassidy. I loved that he had that guitar and stuff like that. So I really, took a liking to that. And then, around 10 years old, I started taking guitar lessons, and I just really connected with, back in the day, there's no cell phones and your TV sucked. There was nothing else to do. So we had a lot of free time. So I could practice and stuff like that. And I remember seeing the movie maybe when I was 12 years old, The Song Remains the Same by Led Zeppelin, and I just was blown away, just totally blown away, by Jimmy Page and the whole, like, wow, I would love to do that. So it was a pursuit that I had early on, and I just never really let go. It was a focus. I mean, a lot of guys wanted to be athletes and stuff like that. I was a pretty athletic kid, played a lot of hockey, a lot of lacrosse and stuff like that. But music was always on the forefront of my mind. I mean, even when you're in class and you're the teacher's boring and you're kind of looking down at your notes and stuff, but I'd be like drawing guitars. I'd be drawing like lighting designs for the stage, and just always everything was music, music, music. And I don't know, I just love it, man. And I know you do too.
Oh yeah. And I actually just released the 200th episode of the
Oh
channel
wow!
today. So yeah, so
Congratulations.
I never learned how to play an instrument. Always wanted to be around music, so this is my opportunity. Anyway, you mentioned Led Zeppelin. Like, what other bands were your inspiration? Who were you listening to and playing along to?
Well, Led Zeppelin for sure. Kiss, a lot of other people my age and stuff like that. When Kiss first came on the scene, it was like, wow, what is this? Because, back then magazines and stuff were everything because TV, like I said, sucked. We didn't have MTV, we didn't have YouTube. So magazines were everything. So when you're flipping through a magazine and all of a sudden you see the guys in Kiss, it's like, what the heck is this? They look like superheroes. And then I got to see them on the Destroyer tour back in 1976. I was a fanatic, and then I got to see Rock and Roll Over Tour and Love Gun. So between Kiss and Led Zeppelin, that was really got the ball rolling for me. I was just consumed by those two bands for sure.
If you see it back on my wall, it's all like old Kiss ads and
Awesome.
stuff from old magazines. Anyway, I'm a Kiss fanatic as well. What was
Yeah, it's go
oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, what was the your first entry into playing in bands, and what was the scene like in Canada where you were at?
Well, I mean, other you're playing like a little high school band and stuff like that was one thing. But when I was 16, I was kind of like ahead of myself playing wise, where guys that like in their late teens and early 20s started to take notice, and there was a band that needed a new guitar player, and they wanted me. And so here I am playing in bars when I'm 16 years old. And next thing you know, I quit high school, still being 16 years old, and became a full-time musician, full-time touring musician. So, and like I said, once again, back then, there was nothing else going on entertainment wise. Now you could just sit home and watch your 200 stations and Netflix and your
Right.
phone and computers and
Right.
video games. There's no reason to leave the house anymore. But back then, you had none of that. So if you wanted to be entertained, you had to go. You had to go out. And so live entertainment back then was huge. And you could literally play 6 nights a week. Monday week, you play what they would call front ends. You play one city Monday to Wednesday, and then you go to another city, play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and sometimes Saturday afternoon, you do a matinee. So you're playing 6 nights a week. And because of that, you could really polish your craft and your stage presence and really get to know how to become a musician. And sadly, those days are gone. I mean, all those places that I was playing back then are all gone. Now you're lucky if you can get like a 1 or 2 gigs a month.
Right.
Back then we're playing like 30, 40 gigs a month, no
Right.
problem. So you can't really, polish yourself like back then. So it was a really, really vibrant scene back then. And it's sad that it's gone, but it is what it is, man.
Yeah, yeah. Um, didn't you? What was that band that you quit school? You quit school at 16. You started with the band, and I was just listening to an interview with you to try to brush up on some of my Greg Fraser knowledge. You were in a band with the lead singer of Bo Nasty, who actually I know of. Is that correct?
That's right.
What can you tell me about that band? And was
That's
there
right.
any
It's funny
potential
you
for
said.
things to happen with it?
Well, the band was called Pharaoh, Pharoah, like the
Yeah,
the Egyptian pharaoh,
right.
and we were dressed up like these Egyptians and stuff like that. We had and Mark was our singer. He was the guy that convinced me to quit high school. He was 19 at the time, and I was 16, and he goes, "Yeah, man, we're gonna be like Plant and Page and Richards and Jagger, me and him, right?" So he led me around because he was already on the road, so he had a lot of road experience where I had none, and yeah, so we were trying to get a record deal and stuff like that, and plugging along and not making any money, and sooner or later he got frustrated. He goes, I can't take it. I got him, I got to make my move. It feels like I'm stagnating here, so he ended up quitting, and uh, I never seen the guy ever again. And next thing I know, I seen he's got signed to Geffen when Brighton Rock got signed way, much later,
Yep.
with Bo Nasty.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I seen some videos and he sang great, and looked great, and it was fantastic.
No, you were talking about the Project Pharaoh and how you guys dressed up. And I know one of the controversial things about Bo Nasty, if you saw the cover of their debut album, they were dressed in like this old school garb, and apparently the band wanted no part of it. So it just reminded me of that they had these weird outfits, and apparently it was all a record label deal, and they
Oh,
didn't they didn't like anyway. So,
Yeah, ours was totally by choice.
right.
It's Mark. We built a wooden coffin, and it was upright like this, and he was inside the coffin, and then like where his feet were, like it was flat, he'd stand, and underneath his feet, we had a space about this big with a flash bomb on it. And you know, so as soon as the head song, the cue, like, you know, we'd be on stage, you'd be looking at this coffin, and as soon as at the minute the flash bomb was going off, he kicked the door open, and then he'd come out in fog and flames, and it was quite the spectacle. I mean, we had a really good following back then, and we're selling out places, and we got an agent, and you know that was a pretty big deal. I mean, when you're first starting out, most of the time when you get sent on the road, you're doing front ends, like I mentioned, Monday to Wednesdays, maybe a Thursday. And then Fridays and Saturdays were for the bigger bands. But right off the bat, we were playing, you know, the back ends and headlining all these places. And but that was a big learning curve because, you know, here I am playing in front of full houses and I'd never really been on big stages before. And I'm a kid. So,
Right.
you know, you don't know how to act. You feel like everybody's looking at you. You feel like you're going to make a mistake, but you deal with it, you know. And sooner or later, you start getting confidence, and it is, you know, it becomes what it becomes.
But were you writing at that point, or what were you guys playing originals or a mixture?
Yeah, back then we were playing hard rock. We were called the Kings of Hard Rock,
Right.
and
Right.
we were playing early Judas Priest and early Scorpions and early UFO. Like these bands weren't heard of. Like Scorpions weren't big yet. Judas Priest, like they weren't big yet. They were nothing back then. But you know, we loved those bands. So a lot of times people thought they were originals. Plus, we were writing originals because we were determined to get a record deal. So we'd mix them all in, you know, and yeah, that was our goal. And since that band, that was my goal too, to always make sure to concentrate on originals. And there's a couple of bands where, you know, you're in between bands, you want to go make money, so you just join a cover band,
Sure.
and you're making good money, but it becomes Groundhog Day. It's like there's no, you know, there's no future. You're making better money because
Right.
you're playing with the people who want to hear, but there's no long-term goal. So I was willing to, you know, sacrifice that and start over and, you know, become an original act.
So I think so that band breaks up. You said Mark left, and is that when the seeds of Brighton Rock get started, or was there any in between projects before Brighton Rock?
Yeah, there was a couple of cover bands, and then I joined another local band. By the way, I grew up in Niagara Falls.
Yeah,
That's where I live now,
sure.
and so there was a local band called Lennox, and they were a cover band, but they were doing originals too. And the same thing, they were trying to get a record deal. And they already had an agent, but they also had a manager, and they actually went to Japan. So back, you know, when I was in between bands, by then I was around 18, 19, and I was looking for a new band, and they remember me from Faro because we're all in the same area, and they needed a new guitar player. Their guitar player, he left because he wanted to join a band, and his band was called Honeymoon Suite. I'm sure you might be familiar with them.
Yes.
He's the
Yeah,
lead singer. He's the lead singer of Honeymoon Suite, Johnny D,
Johnny D.
and we're still good. Yeah, we're still good friends to this day. So he joined. He formed Honeymoon Suite. I replaced him in Lennox, and same thing. We tried to get a record deal. We were getting turned down by a lot of record companies. So we got a hold of a guy named Mick Ronson. And
Yeah.
now you remember him from? He used to play with with David Bowie and
Yes.
Ziggy Stardust and from Mars, and you
Yes.
know, a rock and roll legend. He produced the record for us. So we thought, okay, if we get Mick Ronson to produce our record, how can they possibly turn us down now? You know, so we financed the record ourselves, you know, hired Mick all on our own dime, hoping that we'd get a record deal, and we still couldn't get a deal.
Yeah.
So by then the band broke up. And then after that is when I formed Brighton Rock. And back up a bit, I mentioned that we had management. So because of that, he still became my manager. He only managed me, and he managed Honeymoon Suite. So he got Honeymoon Suite their record deal, and
Yeah.
he always had the guy's name was Steve. He had a lot of faith in me. He goes, man, let's do it again. Form your own band. Who you think you should have, and that's what I did. I formed Brighton Rock, and finally got a worldwide record deal, and we were off to the races.
Well, how was Brighton Rock formed? Like, um who were the first guys that brought in, and when did you know, okay, this is the lineup that we're gonna roll with?
One of my best friends, even to this day, our bass player in Brighton Rock, his name is Stevie Screeves,
Yep.
still lives 10 minutes from my house in the Falls here.
Yeah.
Um, we wanted to be together. So he plays bass, and that's one thing about being in a band. When it's one thing if you're playing in a cover band, you see each other once in a while, but when you were in an original band, to me, it's very important to be able to play with people that you can relate to
Yeah.
and get along with as friends and know you have each other's backs and you trust each other. So that was very huge to me. Uh, I said, no matter, I don't care how good looking you are, how great you're playing. If you're an asshole, I'm not going to play with you
Yeah.
because I've been down that road. You're in a band with great musicians that look great, and then I get off stage and you can't even stand each other,
Yeah.
And so I know that was huge. So, we went through some number changes. Our When you look at our first record, our drummer Mark, he was our third drummer.
Okay.
Our keyboard player John, he was our third keyboard player.
Yeah.
Our singer Gerry was our second singer. Our first singer, his name was Dave McFarlane. He was going to be the guy. He lived about a little over an hour away, which was a little tough for rehearsals and stuff like that, getting together. But at one point, he goes, "Hey guys, just to let you know, I got my girlfriend pregnant." I went, "Oh
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
now what?" Like, we're gonna go on the road and make no money. How
Right.
you possibly can afford the kid and possibly a wife and a family? We could do that. I mean, if we were in a better place, because I don't want to start getting the band out there, start playing gigs. Then you say, "Hey, man, it's not working. I got to quit." And then, so before we start sticking our head above the sand, we got to make sure we're solidified. So luckily enough, there was another guy named Gerry McGhee kicking around. He's in a city called Hamilton, which is about an hour from Niagara Falls, not even. Um, I knew him he's the band called the Rockers, and they were playing a lot of the same music that I was playing back in Pharaoh, playing early, Judas Priest and Sabbath and all that kind of stuff, and killer voice. And we met up with him, and we had a meeting. And I go, "Man, he seems like a great guy. It is what it is." And sure enough, we just started just doing demos, and we replaced our previous singer's voice on some of the songs, and we heard Jerry's voice in the studio, and it's like, wow, I think this is the guy, man. I mean, this guy can really sing. He's got a lot of power, great attitude, loves all the same music as us, same age as us, and he's a lifer. You could tell he's a lifer like us, and that was it. So they have this very, very huge radio station in Toronto, one of the biggest in Canada, actually, called Q107. It still exists to this day. It's humongous. Every year back then, they have the Q107 homegrown contest, and it's like a battle of bands. But people would submit, everybody, all these local, well, not even local, from across the country would submit songs, hoping to be on this record, a vinyl record that they put out every year. And when that record got released, all the record companies would take notice, right? So right away, you're getting a head start notice wise. So before we even played a live date, we were concentrating on putting demos and getting our songs together before we'd even think about playing a live date. Let's get enough almost for a record to see if we're on the right track before we waste time on the road and then break up and start again. And that's what we did. And then we got on that record. So that was huge for us. So right away, record company, Warner Records they took notice and they said, "Hey man, we love it. What else do you got?"
Yeah.
So then we started sending them more songs. Hey, we love it, man. So then they started to give us what you call a development deal, where basically we're going to give you money to pay for these demos, but you got to stick with us. Like, don't be submitting your music to other companies. Yeah, no problem, man.
Right.
We got no money for the studio anyway. So,
Right.
and then we started playing a few gigs here and there, and then we did a showcase for them, and then they signed us, and once again, we're off to the races.
Is this when the 1985 EP comes out? Is that after this signing? Is that when you guys record this EP, or was that before?
That was right in the midst of it. That was
Okay.
during. So
Okay.
the record company was aware of us. He said, "Yes, go ahead, do your." A big part of that, the EP. we have a thing in Canada called Factor, which
Yeah,
the government would give you money because if you're a proven artist, they would give you money. So you don't want to do a video or help you to produce demos.
sure.
So because we have our own EP, we did this all on our own dime. So then we got Factor money, which was stuff like that. So that EP re-recorded for our first record. So
Hey,
yeah,
hey,
I'm,
Greg.
I'm, I'm surprised you know about that EP. It's
Oh,
not very
yeah.
well known.
Trust me, I know. No. Okay. So if you're wondering why we look a little bit different, well, Greg is no longer in Puerto Vallarta, and I'm still in Fargo, unfortunately. But we had some internet issues. So anyway, we the first 20 minutes was good. We had a couple minor blips that I was able to fix, but we're going to continue on. So it's a week later, and hopefully you had a great vacation in Mexico.
Oh, it's fantastic. Kind of sucks being back home.
I can relate. So when we just finished, you guys had just gotten signed, and you're getting ready to record Young, Wild, and Free. So here's a question. Was there ever, and I don't know how this works for Canadian bands, was there ever like a way of, hey, can we try to get down to the States, maybe go to Los Angeles where so many bands were moving? Was there ever any consideration of trying to go somewhere else to make it?
um, yeah, I know, but it just seemed being from Canada and Los Angeles and stuff like that. It just seems so unrealistic.
Sure.
It just seemed like how is that even possible? Plus we didn't have any money.
Right.
That's a big move. I've got some friends that did make that move, and they were quite successful. But
Yep.
because things were kind of happening faster than we expected, like because when we got signed, we weren't really around that long. Like we didn't really. It's not like we're this band like Brighton Rock was in the bars for 5, 10 years. It's like let's get
Sure.
the hell out of here. Nothing's happening here. It was happening right before we even played our first live date. So we kind of took advantage of that momentum and just let things go. It's like wow, if we got to just keep whatever this is happening. It's finally happening. So let's
Right.
don't screw this up.
Absolutely. So you're signed, you get ready to record your debut album. What was that? What was the recording process like? Can you take us, into like, okay, we're getting the producer and kind of, what it took to record that album.
Well, the first thing you just mentioned was producer, trying to find the right guy. And there's only a handful of Canadian guys, me personally, that I wanted. And, of course, because we were unknown, they were like, I don't know. So my manager and rec company started sending me demos of guys like record producers from the States and stuff like that. That are kind of banging around down there.
Sure.
And one guy that caught my ear was Michael Wagner. So, for those of you who don't know, Michael Wagner went on to produce Skid Row and Extreme and, Endless. He's a legend. He's sold hundreds of millions of records. But
Yep.
at the time, he was relatively unknown. He just finished recording Under Lock and Key by Dokken, so that wasn't even released yet. That's the record when I started hearing all the demos, I heard that one. Went, whoa, whoa, what do we got here?
Yeah.
Nice. George Lynch, the guitar sounded fantastic. The drums were big, the harmonies. I go, this is exactly what we're looking for right here.
Yeah.
And so the record company got a hold of Michael, and he flew into Canada. We did some pre-production and started recording, and it was magic. It was such a pleasure to work with Michael. And then Michael's next band after that, I think, it was White Lion. And then I think he did Extreme and then Skid Row and then on and on. I'm sure you know Michael's history.
He he has produced some of my favorite albums of all time. Skid Row, Slave to the Grind, Warrants, Dog Eat Dog. So Dokken, Under Lock and Key, your guys' stuff. I'm actually I'm hoping I can get him to come on sometime because I would love to hear his story. Anyway, you're exactly right. How long did it take once you guys got in there and started recording?
Um, it took probably 2, 3 weeks,
Sure.
maybe. That's literally 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and it doesn't seem that long. Time flies, but it seems like it was like a week or 2 weeks, and
Sure.
I think week for bed tracks, and then week for overdubs, and then we had a week or two to mix down in Los Angeles and stuff. So
Right. Right. So it wasn't exactly like Def Leppard's Hysteria.
oh no, the money wasn't there.
Yeah.
They keep
Probably because
calling
you're
them.
wearing a Green Bay Packers jersey,
Ah,
and
that.
we don't really take kindly to that over here.
Who would be your team? The
Well, I'm a
Bears?
Steelers fan, but I live in
Steve?
North Dakota, and we're
Right.
right next door to Minnesota. So everybody around here lives and breathes
Vikings.
Minnesota Vikings, and so
Right.
the Packers are like, the evil
I
around.
hear you. It's funny you say Pittsburgh Steelers. Our singer Gerry, who sadly passed away 2020,
Yes.
he hardcore Steelers fan. He had season tickets, even though we lived in Canada. Tattoos all over the place with Steelers, Jack Lambert, and oh yeah, he was a diehard. So
One of the,
he would
one of
look.
my one of my first Brighton Rock memories was, if you remember, there was this old video magazine called Hard and Heavy, and you
I
guys
do.
were featured in that, and Gerry was and you were playing a song called Power Overload, and I didn't remember knowing about Brighton Rock before I watched this. And I'm like, what is that song? That song is amazing. And
Oh
then he
wow,
starts talking about how he's a Steelers fan. And I'm like, I got to find out more. So that's actually where I started becoming,
wow.
right. I was like, I got to go find your guys' album. So,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that particular show from the Hard and Heavy, that was at the Marquee in London, England.
Okay.
So that was our first time over there, and yeah, that was a blast.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Man,
great
that's
memories.
so okay, so you record this album. When you get done, what is like, I'm assuming that the main goal of a Canadian band, no offense to Canada, but is, or just because of the size, is that you're hoping to break in America, right?
Sure,
If going platinum in Canada is what, 100,000 copies?
100,000. It's the same per capita that it would be in America. America is literally 10 times the population.
Yes.
So you've
Yeah,
got roughly 400 million. We've got 40 million. So
right.
yeah, it's the same. Yeah,
So it's not a knock. It's any band around the world is hoping to break in America because that's where the amount of people are and the fans. So what was the and I don't want to just concentrate on America, but what
sure.
was the strategy when you get done with that album to break it not only in Canada but in America? What was the plan?
Well, hopefully to get on some big tours
Yeah.
and like I mentioned, our manager, he managed a band called Honeymoon Suite. So
Yep.
he got them on tour with Journey. I think that was during their Escape tour. So, I mean, that was huge, right? And they went on tour with Heart, and that's when Heart was blowing up back then. So we were hoping to get on some of those same tours. So there was talk of us touring Canada with AC/DC. And we're like, oh my God. So then it was confirmed. We're touring Canada with AC/DC and we can't believe it, right? Sure enough, it falls through. And then we're supposed to go tour with a brand new band called Cinderella all through
Ah,
Europe. Confirmed. Canceled.
oh my.
Something went, yeah, all these things kept falling through for us. So then we ended up touring all through America, but by ourselves, just
Okay.
headlining all the clubs everywhere. You name it. I'm sure we hit all the all the major cities, basically, all through Texas and Florida and New York
Right.
State and California and stuff like that. Yeah,
Right.
never made it to North Dakota, I don't think, but what
You're really
are we
missing
gonna
out. Let me tell you.
do?
It's a treat. No, I'm so how long did you guys tour? And I know, like, you got videos for uh We Came to Rock, I think, and Young, Wild and Free, and maybe Can't Wait for the Night. Can you fill us in on like the videos you got and just what kind of promotion you got besides going out and playing live?
Yeah, so our first video was "We Came to Rock,"
Yep.
and that was it was got played a lot in Canada. Our we have what we held what you call Much Music, which is the same as MTV, same
Yep.
thing. So we got a lot of play there. We did get some play on MTV and more on VH1 way back then.
Sure.
Our second single, "Can't Wait for the Night."
Yep.
That was the only two real videos
Okay.
from the first record.
Okay.
And then yeah, like I said, we just tried to just do it the old fashioned way, get the word of mouth going and just keep playing. And we played a lot, man.
Right.
I mean, if you were to happen to go on our website, brightonrock.ca, there's a folder there that has literally all our dates
Oh, okay.
before we even got our record deal, because we used to be called Heart Attack
Okay.
before when we got a record deal. We were called Heart Attack, but there was another band called Heart Attacks. They said, "Look, you guys got to change your name."
Yeah.
But yeah, just the old-fashioned way, just tour, do as many interviews as we can, hit all the radio stations, do live, in studio if we can, just do it the old-fashioned way, because back then, no social media, no
Right.
nothing. It's you have to get out there and pound the pavement, and we did, believe me.
And that's what I've heard from people is that you guys were like just the ultimate road dogs,
Yep.
constantly touring. Um, so when you get done with that, like I'm assuming there's some sort of discussion with the record company, like, hey, the first album went great. Let's did like when you get done with that album, what is the feeling in the band or with the record label? Is it like, yes, hey, we're on the right track? Were they disappointed? Was there talk of having to make any changes? I'll shut up now, but like what happened after the end of that cycle?
Yeah, so when we got our record deal, we also got signed in America to Adco Atlantic, the
Yep,
same as AC/DC and stuff like that.
yep,
Derek Shulman signed us. So that was huge for us because we didn't want to just be a Canadian only. So that got us a lot of doors opening in the States. So, but unfortunately, when that first record was completed, the tour ended, and everything started to wind down. We didn't sell. We didn't go gold in America.
right,
We didn't make the dent that they were hoping. So
right.
they didn't sign us for our second record.
Okay,
So, but we were still signed all over Europe. We Warner International, but not America anymore. But
sure.
because our record did so great in the States, in Canada, I mean, the record company was very enthusiastic about doing a number two, and the
Yep.
number two came out and it went gold, and yeah, that was another, touring all over the place again.
So
We did
that's
go back down. We did go back down to the States a lot more too, but we didn't have that American record label
right.
support, so it was tough for us. Yeah,
So that was the Take a Deep Breath album in
that's right.
1988. And who produced that? And I
A
should have.
guy named a guy named Jack Richardson.
Okay.
He's a legendary record producer in Canada. He produced like the Guess Who, Alice Cooper, way back then. Like in
Yep.
the early days, before Bob Ezrin. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep.
Well, Jack taught Bob Ezrin everything, and he
Okay.
was like a kid. So Bob Ezrin, worshiped Jack Richardson. If you in the you have the Grammys in the States. In Canada, we have the Junos.
Yes.
So if you win producer of the year, you win the Jack Richardson producer
Oh,
of the year award. Like
okay.
he's a Hall of Fame. He's a legend over here. So
Okay.
he produced Night Moves by Bob Seger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he produced us.
Yeah.
We had a guy named Andrew Scarth. He did all the engineering on that.
Sure.
It's a different sound compared to the first record, so it's a lot. It's not so hard. We do have some hard and heavy songs on it, but it's a lot more. The sound is a lot more radio friendly.
Yep.
We're trying to get more radio because, like I said, our other our friends and Ben, um, what you, band label mates, I guess. Honeymoon Suite were blowing up in
Totally.
Canada. You know, they were Group of the
Totally.
Year, so they're all over the radio. And then you got Brighton Rock, and going, well, you know, you got to be like those guys, you know.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, we're not going to change our style of writing much, but you know, if the production can help in any way, we're all for it. So that's what you
Sure.
hear. It's a little. Some people say it's a little softer sounding, but
Sure.
we still have the heavy metal songs on there. So
Totally.
we're really happy with that record, dude. And it was really huge in the UK and in Europe too. That we did really well over there. So
And didn't you guys get nominated for a Juno Award or something for
yeah, we
after
got
that album?
nominated. We got nominated, or that might have been the first record we got nominated, or it might have been the second. I can't remember for best new group, and
Yes.
we lost to another legendary group called Tragically Hip.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so
Right.
maybe some of the people in the southern the states might not be too familiar with them,
Yeah.
but they're huge. They're one of the
Huge.
Canada's biggest band. They're humongous here. We lost to them, and then we had I'll jump ahead to our third record, Love Machine. That was nominated for Hard Rock Group of the Year, and we lost to Rush. So you can't, yeah, you can't beat Rush, right? No
Yeah.
matter what, they're automatically going to win. So, but we were nominated for a couple of Junos, so that's you know, that's always nice to know.
So how did Take a Deep Breath uh how like once you get done with that process, and that's a great, it is more poppy, it's a little poppier in places, but I mean, how did that fare? What was the feeling after you got done with that? Because like you said, after the first one, you're like, hey, let's maybe lighten it up a little bit. Honeymoon Suite is having. And by the way, the first album I ever bought with my own money was Honeymoon Suite, The Big Prize.
Oh
So
wow!
that's
Oh,
absolutely true. Yeah,
that's awesome!
yeah.
Wow.
So, but once you get done with Take a Deep Breath, because you definitely go harder on the third album. So what happened after Take a Deep Breath when you guys reconvene and you go, okay, here's where we're at. Here's what we got to do going forward.
Well, at that time, you know, 89, 90, you know, this is when Guns N' Roses is starting to take off, and the landscape was starting to get a lot heavier sounding. Almost, it wasn't quite grunge yet. It was just on the verge. Uh, and we missed it, you know, because a lot of people go, hey, man, you guys got to rock it out the next record. So we decided, yeah, that we're going to make it hardly any keyboards at all,
Yep.
uh, and make a hard rock record. And if that's our last record, let's go down knowing we did what we wanted to do, instead of you know doing what is expected of us, and not being true to ourselves, and then going, man, if we would have only did it what we wanted to, who knows, right? But
Sure.
that's the record we wanted to make,
Yep.
and it's our probably one of our heaviest of the three,
Yeah.
you know. So
Totally.
yeah.
Was there any and so this might be backtracking.
Yep.
What was the touring for Take a Deep Breath? Were you able, and you said you weren't on an American record label at that time. You did play in America. Were you able to get any better tours, or was it mainly just you guys going out again on your own?
Yeah, the only major tour we got was with Triumph.
Okay.
We toured a lot of dates with Triumph through Canada, so that was big for us. But
Absolutely.
you know, yeah, where the Toronto Maple Leafs played back then is a place called Maple Leaf Gardens, and that's Canada's Madison Square Gardens. I mean, that's the place. We got to play there. We got an encore. We got to play the Montreal Forum, which is another, you know, amazing place. So that was huge for us, but we couldn't get any other big tours, and that was, you know, that was hard for us, and that's one of the reasons why we fired our manager at the time. So when our third record came out, we were in the process of getting American management at the time. So that was the plan. We're going to record the third record. We're going to get American management and then get it released in the States. And then we're on our way. Finally, you know, with
Right.
a hard rock record, we can, you know, we can tour with a lot of these big bands down there. And then, of course, everything kind of fell through like it does with so many other bands.
Yeah.
And then, you know, by 1992, when the record, the night record came out in 91, I believe, and then
Yep.
by 92, year later, it's like it was evident. Well, this is when grunge is just starting to come out. It's like,
Yep.
I don't know, guys. It's not looking good. We fired our manager, and we have nobody else in Canada that can take us to that next level without major representation. We're kind of at a standstill here. So the band broke up, and we were broke up for a good 10 years.
That
Before we did some.
1991 album, Love Machine, the
Yep.
single Hollywood Shuffle, I think did pretty well in
Yeah.
Canada.
Did
Um,
great. Yeah.
and if my information is right, you guys were nominated for Hard Rock Album of the Year at the
Yep.
1992 Juno Awards, but
Losing to Rush.
losing to Rush. But yes, in 1991, all of a sudden this song Smells Like Teen Spirit starts blowing up on MTV and radio, and you did kind of address it. Some bands might think, hey, it's okay to see, we didn't know that when grunge came in, all of a sudden there was going to be this huge backlash. At least I didn't, of the bands that we just thought, hey, here's another style of, like you had glam, you had thrash, you had all these. So we just thought it was another style of hard rock. But it seemed like around 1992, you kind of had to make a choice. Like if you like grunge, you better almost disown anything that came before it. What was it like seeing that that happen, or what was your point of view of seeing grunge come in and how it impacted you?
I understood it. I mean, each decade, I mean, from the 60s to the 70s, I mean, if you listen to music during the 70s, mid 70s, it sounds nothing like the mid 60s.
Sure.
And the same with the 60s. You hear stuff, during the 60s, it sound nothing like the stuff from the 50s.
Right.
And that's what it was like. So when the 80s kicked around, I can, when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, that's when music means the most to you. That's, decades and decades later, that those are the times that really mean the most to you. So now you've got these new 16-year-olds coming on, 17 and 18-year-olds, and they don't want to hear something from 10 years ago. That's old people. We want new and fresh.
Yeah.
And these new bands that were coming out, they were new and fresh. They didn't look like the 80s because the 80s became very oversaturated. If you look at like all these magazine, Hip Radar, Metal Edge, you flip the pages and every band, they look the same. I mean,
Yeah.
you could take one guy, put him in that band, and like nobody, there was nobody stood out anymore. But the grunge guys were going, nope, no spiky hair, no makeup. We're gonna no flashy clothes, anti-flash. We're gonna wear, grungy looking clothes and shorts and anything. We don't want to resemble anything to do with those bands.
Yeah.
And the record companies too. They were no longer going to sign any of those 80s type bands because you're from that last decade. This is a new decade. It's all
Yeah.
fresh. Let's start fresh. And I understood it. I understood it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of how we dressed, on the cover of the 1991 album, Gerry was wearing American flag pants. Was there any
Oh yeah.
controversy? I'm assuming there might have been some controversy. I think I've heard a little bit, but was there any kind of blowback? Like, oh, now or what happened with that? Was there any?
Well, because there was no social media, we didn't hear a lot, but we did hear grumblings like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
traitor, how could you do that?" But,
Yeah.
but we were shopping for clothes. We were in Hollywood when
Sure.
that album cover. We were down in Hollywood, California,
Yeah.
writing music, and the guy who took that picture was named Niels Lozauser, like one of the most famous photographers of all time.
Legend.
And yeah, so we're looking for clothes, and Gerry goes, "Oh, look at these pants. They look cool. Put them on. Yeah, they look good." And that's all it was.
Yeah.
There was no real second thoughts going, "Oh my God," like if they were Canadian pants, but it just happened to be. It is what it is, and yeah, but I'm sure if social media was out, then we'd really be hearing it. You'd see a million comments. But back in those days, we didn't hear. There is no comments unless you bump into somebody in a bar or something like that. And that's another thing too. When you release a record back then, like we're now, if you release a single or a video, you go on Facebook or Instagram, right away you can see, hey man, great video, blah blah blah. And everybody's talking to each other, they're all talking about it. And back then there was nothing.
Right.
So your songs on the radio and there's nothing. You don't hear anybody. There's no, unless you're reading fan mail, which comes a lot later and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, there was grumbling, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's
Sure.
just a pair of pants.
What was the touring for Love Machine? And like you said, you guys did disband after that, but did you go out
Oh
and
yeah,
try
yeah.
to-
We toured hard on that record, all across Canada, a little bit in the States, but mostly Canada. Like we had a name by then, so
Yeah,
we could basically anywhere we played, we could pretty much sell out. We weren't big enough to play all the big arenas yet.
sure,
We never really got to that level.
sure.
Big clubs, small halls, maybe the odd theater here and there, maybe the odd small arena. But yeah, so we just toured to death, and then at the end of the tour, it's like, well. Now what? Like,
Right.
and then we decided to take a break, an extended break, so.
So what happens then? Like I said before, I listened to some old interviews, I try to do a bunch of research. Is it true that Gerry auditioned for Motley Crue?
No, he was on the list.
Okay.
That's why he went down there.
Okay.
Uh, he, but once they got John
Yep.
Karobi,
Karabi?
once they got, yep, that was it. Okay, we
Okay.
found our guy. So he never got a chance to actually do it. But once he was down there, he goes, well, while I'm down here, I'm going to try to form my own band. So he managed to get some LA musicians and stuff like that, and nothing panned out. He gave it his best effort, and he goes, no, it was costing a lot of money because nobody's bankrolling him down there.
Right.
So he's trying to, do it all on his own, and it's tough starting over again once you
Yeah.
really, you're climbing that ladder. You're at a certain place, and then boom, you're at the bottom again, crawling and scratching, trying to make any kind of a name or dent. So yeah, it was tough for him. So he eventually came back home, and yeah. So
What did you so what and I like I've heard there was rumors about maybe trying to get into Triumph. What was after Brighton Rock broke up? What did you do? What was your plan and what ended up happening?
um, yeah, so Rick Emmett, he ended up going solo. So
That's
Triumph
right.
was looking for uh, writers basically. So I happened to go to write with Gil Moore and Mike Levine. We knew those guys because we toured with them, and we did a lot of recording at Gil's recording studio, Metalworks, which is a huge, famous record recording studio here in Canada. Everybody, I mean, Guns N' Roses record. It still exists to this day. It's a major place. So I went do some writing and stuff like that. Hoping that I could get in there, but I could never
Sure.
sing like Gil Moore, so that was going to be tough. But there's other writers. Phil X ended up getting that gig, and
Right.
rightly so.
Yep.
He's the man.
Yeah.
And Phil, back then, it's funny when we were doing Love Machine. Phil, we had a lot of time off. So Phil and our drummer in Brighton Rock, Mark Caverzan, they had a three-piece, and they just played covers and stuff like that. So that
Yeah.
was kind of cool. That's how I first met Phil. But
And when you
yeah,
say
so
Phil X, who ended up in Bon Jovi
Bon Jovi, that's
after
right. Yeah.
Richie Sambora left. So
He's been there for 12 years now, I think. So he's pretty much a staple there.
yeah.
Yeah. So I did do some writing, nothing that made the record. They had outside writers. I was hoping to get in there
Yeah.
because there was talk of having like two guitar players on stage. So I was hoping it was going to be me and Phil, but it never did pan out. So then I ended up joining a big legendary Canadian band called Helix,
Yes.
and I was with them for 3 to 4 years,
Yep.
and that's right in the heart of grunge. So, even for a band of that stature and as big as they are, it was tough. We were touring a new record. Um, what was it called? I forgot what it
A
was called now.
business doing pleasure.
That's right, and that's a great record too.
Yes.
Uh, um, yeah, so we toured all through Canada and did some American dates, Harpo's in Detroit and stuff like that. But it was tough. It was tough, because grunge was in full force by then, by 95 and stuff like that. It was 94, 95. That's everywhere. So, I mean, you would never hear any 80s style music on the
Right.
radio anymore. So the writing was on the wall. And, I just, by then, I was just so tired of touring. I mean,
Right.
like I mentioned earlier, I became a full-time musician when I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I did that till I was 34 years old, and like
Right.
year after year after year. And it's not for everybody. Touring's not for everybody, it's great. I mean, you can have the time of your life, but there's a lot of downtime that can really suck. And you get the time changes and those long drives, and just I'm sure you've heard of this all before,
Sure.
but it wears on you. So it's like, I decided, okay, I'm done touring and I get married. And so I got married and had some kids, and started my own little solo group called Fraser Gang.
That's right.
Did a couple of solo records with that. And yeah, so there you go.
So I remember when that came out, I bought that. I bought the first Phrase Gang CD, and I just want to say the song "Savior." Holy buckets! What an emotional, like, I love that song. So I wanted you to know.
Oh, oh, okay. Well, once we get talking a little bit, I got to tell you something about that, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. How did you hear about Phrase Gang in
I
North
you know
Dakota?
I just when the internet started existing, I mean, I'm such a music nut. I would just look up and try to find out what was happening with my old bands, and you scour the news, and oh, Greg Fraser from Brighton Rock is, and I'm like, and about that time, that's around 2007, 2008. You're like, shit, there's no good rock. I mean, like, you start missing the stuff that you were growing up with, and,
Absolutely.
and,
I
and you're
know.
looking for something to fill that void. And it's not like I only listen to rock. I listen to a lot of different things. But, you're like, hey, who is still out there trying to, not like copy the past, but, is playing guitar and hard rock guitar and throwing some ballads in there. So anyway, so I bought the Phrase Gang CD. And now I have so many CDs. I wish I would have it here, but trust me, I do have it. I'm not just saying
Oh, oh,
that.
that's awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. I
Yeah,
can put, I don't know, 25 cents more royalties in my pocket because of
don't spend it all in one place.
that.
Um, okay, so you said you were in Helix for a little while. You get tired of the touring. You get married. You have kids, but in 2001, Brighton Rock reunites for a tour. And then a live album, which is called A Room for Five Live. That was in two. So what led? I mean, and I'm just assuming, when things aren't working out with other bands, you're like, well, might as well get back on the horse. Or what happened to get that you guys reunited?
um, well, we missed it. One of Gerry's relatives got in a really bad accident and stuff like that. And so we decided to do a charity concert, get the band back together and do a charity concert, um, to raise money to help with expenses. And so that was the first time,
Yeah.
we were together in 10 years, the first time we
Yep.
were on stage together. And after that, we did a handful of shows, but we didn't tour. We
Right.
didn't tour. Everybody's
Okay.
lives. Yeah, we couldn't tour that anymore.
Okay.
Gerry had a really successful, has a really successful record pressing plant, making vinyl records and stuff like
Okay.
that. So that was huge for him. So he couldn't just say, okay, I'm going to go on tour for a year and put that by the side. It was too big. So we would do shows here and there,
Sure. Sure.
and yeah.
And then you guys released the Essentials in 2006, a greatest hits compilation. There was some controversy, or at least just from what I read online. Did you guys have any involvement in the songs that got put on that? Because
No.
isn't We Came to Rock wasn't on it? like which seems like
And
kind of a surprise.
it totally surprised. I mean, that's our first single of our first record. That
Yeah,
song introduced us to the world. So I don't know who dropped the ball on that one. We had like, I mean, even the photo on the cover, it's like that's the best photo they had. We had, I remember that photo session. There was way better. Yeah, it's one of those things,
sure,
the record company just, let's throw this out there and see if it makes some money. So
sure.
that happens to lots of
Oh,
bands.
and yeah, the record company throws it out. They don't even discuss with the band and ask you what you think should be on it. So anyway, I
Mhm.
have that the essentials, and I mean
Oh, wow.
it's great, but yeah, it's just surprising that the first single wasn't on it. But
Yeah.
um,
I hear you.
okay, so that comes out in '06, and like you said, you guys are playing some shows, but then in '07. Phrase Gang, you and Screebs from Brighton Rock start that. Is that can you tell us how Phrase Gang came to be?
Well, I just, being the chief songwriter in Brighton Rock, I've been writing since I was a kid, so I just never stopped writing. And as not being in a touring band anymore,
Yeah.
it didn't stop me from writing. I still get a lot of pleasure from that. Like to this day, I still all the time. Hey, played my guitar. A lot of guitar players will pick up the guitar and just start playing scales or leads. I try to write music. I'll try to write a new riff, come up with something on the spot. It's like, hey, that's a good little riff.
Yeah.
Record that, and then time goes by. You start accumulating all these riffs and songs, and go, man, I got these songs. It's a shame, you know,
Yeah.
I can't make a record. So I started auditioning different singers. Stevie Screeves from Brighton Rock, our bass player, he was on board. He still lives 10 minutes, like I mentioned before, I think,
Yep.
away from me, so yeah, let's do something, so and then we started getting different guys, but for one reason or another, we couldn't find the right guy. You find a guy that's a great singer but didn't really have the greatest attitude, or
Sure.
he couldn't commit, so I can't, I'm available in 5 weeks from now, so forget it, right? So then what I would do in the meantime, I would sing on the demos. So when a singer would come in, they could here's how the song goes, and Stevie and our drummer Philip, goes, man, there's nothing wrong with your vocals. I mean, you don't have a high voice like Gerry did, but
Sure.
your vocals are great, as far as they concern. Why don't you just sing? And I say, well, really? 'Cause, I never planned on being a front man or a lead singer. I was always happy, hanging back, playing lead guitar, doing backing vocals. But so that's what happened. We did a couple, went to the proper recording studio and did the vocals and stuff for real.
Yep.
It's like I can live with that. I like it, and a lot of other people started liking it too. So it started giving me confidence. So we released the first CD, and year or two later, we released our second, and
Yep.
yeah, it did, critically acclaimed, but we never
Yeah.
got a chance to do the big tours.
Sure.
No major rec company behind us because like the grunge took over, and even that kind of died out. So, but once you get to a certain age and stuff like that, unless you're a legend, it's hard to get the big backing
Of course.
anymore. So this released it kind of on our own. We got one of our former managers, Ralph Alfonso. He had a small record label called Bongo Beat Records, but he had distribution, in America and Canada and in Europe. So we hopped on that label and we managed to get, over to Europe and stuff like that. Not playing, but at least it got released over there. So,
Sure. Sure.
so that was a huge plus for us.
So you release two albums with Phrase Gang.
Mhm.
Then you guys get back and you do what I thought was an amazing cover of Kiss's Creatures of the Night in 2013. It got a kick-ass video. It was for a like a tribute for cancer. It was called A World Without Heroes. How did that end up coming about that you guys did that project?
Um, there's a gentleman named Mitch LaFon. He's a pretty big
I was just chatting
interviewer.
with him last night on
Oh,
on
no way!
on X. on Twitter. He and I follow each other. We chat music. I know
Oh, okay.
he's going through some health problems. I don't know if you knew that,
Yeah. Oh, I
but so
do. I do.
anyway,
Yeah.
Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Yeah, I'm definitely aware of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. So he interviewed me. Um, and so we got to know each other a little bit. And then when the Kiss thing, when he was getting that off the ground, he was, thinking what he was going to do. And he goes, "Hey, would Brighton Rock be interested in doing a song?" I go, "Yeah, I think I'll ask the rest of the guys." And he went, "Yeah, let's try something. What are we going to do?" And so he sent me a list of what everybody else was doing. And but I knew that 95% of everybody was just going to do the same version as Kiss did it, right? So, and it's kind of hard to, once you get a song embedded into your brain,
Yes.
no matter how good somebody re-records it, it's not the same anymore. Even if
Yes.
they play it better and they sing it better and it sounds better, it's not the same anymore. And I knew that, so I said, well, let me just dig through the archives and find a song, and we can really not rewrite it, but reimagine it. And
Yes.
so we Creatures of the Night. We slowed it down, changed the key, and made it more
Yes.
haunting sounding. And that's what you hear on the record. And Mitch said that's one of his favorite songs on the record, not the favorite, but one of them for sure. And we got a great response from that. Got lot of humongous amount of plays on YouTube.
Oh, totally.
And yeah. So yeah, we were really happy with that.
It was phenomenal. And I'm like, I'm right with you. I don't want, don't give me a straight cover. You're probably not gonna improve on something that we already know. But when you make it totally different, now I'm interested. And I'm like, oh,
That's right.
so I thought
That's a
that was phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, like if somebody's going to do another version of "Ain't Talking About Love" by Van Halen, no matter what, it's not going to be better. You know what I
No,
mean? Because the other one's so ingrained in your head,
right.
So it's tough. I mean, there's a new Triumph record coming out right now. It's
Yep.
the same thing. They're doing all covers, so I'm hoping there's going to be some people that are
Yep.
going to be a little bit more imaginative instead of just doing a cover of a cover. So yeah.
I've heard a couple of the songs. It so far it sounds like it's kind of a straight cover, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with the rest of it.
Sure.
Um, so okay, now the next thing I know is you guys do your last live shows in 2019, and I want to, but you do Phrase Gang in 2007, 2008 in that time period. Was there, I mean, were you doing music? You're probably writing, what was going on in those years before you guys do your last shows from like in the 2010s? What was happening?
Yeah. So like the two I can't remember. I think the Phrase Gang 2 record came out in 2011 or
Okay.
2012.
Okay.
So
Yep.
that's when Brighton Rock was getting back together because we were starting we got offered to do a festival in England, Firefest, which is
Firefest.
yeah, it's a big, huge festival.
Yep.
At that point, it was like 8 years in a row. They were doing every year. It would sell out, and
Yep.
we got offered to be on that festival. So it's like, yeah, let's do it. That'd be great to go back to England, because we
Sure.
had a big following over there. And once we got over there, we couldn't believe it. Wow, the response was just like the old days. And
Yeah.
people, and we had an autograph session, and I was nervous. Going, it's going to be pretty embarrassing if hardly anybody shows up. We were being flooded. People
Yep.
were bringing all these records from way back, and T-shirts and posters, and it's like it was overwhelming. And we were really, really surprised and happy
Wow.
with that. And because of that, we decided, let's continue doing this. We're not going to tour, but let's do handfuls of shows
Sure.
for the next, for whenever, right?
Yep.
And we tried to do a new record, a brand new Brighton Rock record, but our schedules, we just couldn't get it together. But because back in the day, that was our full-time job. So
Yep.
we were 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Everything was Brighton Rock. But now people are married and they moved on and stuff like that. So we could never get all five guys in the room, hardly ever. Maybe the odd band meeting here and there or rehearsals and stuff like that. But you know, to do a record right, you want to be together for at least 2 straight weeks where you're banging it out every day, work honing the songs. Let's try it again, try it again. We could never do it. We could never get it together. So we abandoned that, and but we still played some shows up until 2019. Our last shows was the Monsters of Rock cruise, and I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yep.
And that was a dream come true. Hobnobbing with all these other rock and roll legends. So that
Yeah.
was a great way to end things. And we didn't know it was going to be the end. We wanted to do more shows, but that was our last shows. Was the Monsters of Rock cruise. So
And so Gerry McGhee passed away from cancer on August 25th, 2020.
yep.
And I don't know how much you can go into it, but when did you find out that he was ill and what, I mean, I'm sure that's got to be devastating.
Yeah, we found out it would have been around Christmas, and 8 months later he passed away. So by the time he found out, roughly 8 months later, he passed away sadly. And
Yeah.
it's been 5 years, and I still can't believe it. I still can't believe it. I'll have dreams where, we're doing a Brighton Rock show, and Jerry's there. It's just like he's still, and then you wake up, go, oh my God, it was only a dream. It's yeah, that was tough. And it's still tough, and it's still hard to swallow, and it's a shame. He's such a young, vibrant guy. When he first got diagnosed, I thought, oh, he'll beat this. And then,
Sure.
he's not gonna, this is nothing. He's a tough guy. He's not a quitter. And not that he quit, but
Right.
he had that to him, and
Yeah.
it was shocking. It's shocking, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned, to finish our Brighton Rock off and the Monsters of Rock cruise, that's a great way to end it. Instead of some dingy club that's half full and stuff like that, like
Right.
we'll look back and go, man, yeah, we had a good little run there.
Absolutely. So after he passes, you start this project called Storm Force. Were the songs that ended up on Storm Force, were they originally the ones that were maybe going to be Brighton Rock? But
There was a Yeah, there was two songs on the record that were going to be on the Brighton Rock record,
yep,
but we just couldn't finish them. Like I mentioned, we had some songs for the Brighton Rock record that the song would be finished, but there'd be no lyrics. Jared didn't have lyrics yet, or he would sing half of a song, but the real drums weren't on there yet. It was just drum machine, like just guide tracks, stuff like that.
right.
Yeah. So, but like I mentioned before, I'm constantly writing. So, I when it was time to do the Storm Force record, um, because I'm writing so much, when you write a new song, it's fresh to you. It's like, wow, I like this. And what happens, sadly, sometimes when songs sit around too long, you kind of like, that's old. Meanwhile, nobody's even heard the song. Could be the best song you ever written in your life, but
Right.
you go, I'm kind of tired of that song. So and that's
Sure.
what happens, eh? You write a new song, and all of a sudden, oh my God, this is the best song I ever wrote.
Right.
And that's what happens. So, I kept writing, and we wrote that first record. So yeah.
And when did that first Storm Force record come out? Was that in 2020 or when did that first come out?
Yeah, it was released February 2020, just in time for COVID.
Right.
COVID was just starting in March. 1 month later, we released the record. We had dates booked and stuff like that for the record release, and then we had to postpone. Okay, our first dates were in April. It's like, okay, well, this thing will only be a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. Then we'll just postpone it. Nope. Next thing you know, there's lockdowns everywhere, and we couldn't do any live shows for like a year or two, whatever it was, 2 years. So that record, we got a record deal with Escape Records in the UK.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they released it, and that was huge for us because we got European distribution over there. So, which is big. And for those of you that, don't know, like distribution is really big because if you live in Ireland or England and you have no distribution and you're in Canada and it's like, hey, I want to buy your CD. Well, okay, now I got to, you know, get this CD and ship it over to England. So now there go all these shipping costs and stuff like
Yes.
that. And it's tough.
Yeah.
You basically lose money. So when you already have distribution in Europe and Canada and in America, stuff like that, that's huge. So
How
yeah,
did
so we
how did how did Stormforce come together? You had a project called Phrase Gang. Was there any thought of just, okay, this is going to be a Phrase Gang record, or what led to you going, no, it's going to be something new. It's going to be Stormforce.
yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I never had any intentions of being a front man. And when I found when Phrase Gang did play live, I was so stressed out playing live because not only do I have to remember all the guitar parts, and being in tune, but remembering all the lyrics that I wrote, never played it before, and singing on key. And then when a song ends, usually in Brighton Rock, a song went in, I'd, be able to go to my guitar and grab a drink and get a towel because Gerry would be talking between songs.
Yep.
That ain't like that. The song ends, everybody's still looking at me. So I got my face is dripping. I need a drink of water and I don't want dead air. So I'm trying to talk. And then
Right.
it was tough. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy. So, I thought, we did 2 records. We were really proud of those records, but I want to start fresh again and start brand new players, brand new energy, and you know, managed to get Pat Gallardi, our singer,
Yeah.
and he's one of the best singers I've ever heard in my life. I mean, he's unbelievable. He can sing anything, and he lives 15 minutes away from me here. So
Yep.
it's great. Yeah, so really
I've been
proud
I've
of.
been listening to some of that stuff on YouTube, and I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke. It's really good. So
Oh.
is there are we going to hear more from Storm Force, or what's coming up for
Yep.
you?
Well, as a matter of fact, we finished Storm Force 2. It's
Okay.
all recorded and it's in the mixing stages right now. And one of the songs on that record is a re-recording of Savior.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So
Love
I was
that song.
mentioning to you earlier. I got something to
Yeah.
tell you about that. Yeah. So Savior has been re-recorded,
Okay.
um, and the reason is when I recorded that song, for those guitar players out there, I recorded that song in the key of D.
Sure.
So when it came time to sing the chorus and stuff like that, I couldn't really hit those high notes. So
Right.
I had to change the key on for Savior to suit my voice. But I
Sure.
always felt like I'm happy with the way it came out, but it still always sounded better to me in its original key.
Yep.
And lo and behold, Pat can sing in that key, no problem. So I go, hey, let's just try this. And he started singing and went, oh my God, that's
Right.
what I heard in my head in the first place. So I think you're really, if you like the first version, I think you're really going to be loving this version. So
Abs
there you go.
so so the song is Savior. Go check out the Phrase Gang version, which is phenomenal. So now I'm looking forward to hearing. So do we have a time frame? When are we hoping that might come out? The Storm Force 2.
It all depends on our producer, Darius Chapaniak.
Okay.
He's a very busy guy. He's in high demand here, so we're basically waiting on him. Uh,
Okay.
he 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 uh, he fits us in when he can, but but he's got so many things in the fire, and we don't want to switch guys just to rush it. We feel comfortable the way things are. So hey, if it takes a few more months for it to come out, so be it. I could tell the guys, it's like once the record's out, people forget how long it took to get released. They're just happy that it's out. So that's what we're hoping. It's going to be soon, but I don't want to. There's a year ago I was saying, oh, by next summer it'll be out, and then sure enough, it's not yet. So I don't want to say anymore. But like I mentioned, it is recorded. It's all done. He's already mixed over half of the record, so we're getting close. We're getting
Yeah.
very close.
Well, when it comes out, I'd love to, you're either welcome to come back on and talk about it, or else, but I
Absolutely.
will try to be sharing with people because I'm excited to hear what you're doing. I have a couple more questions, and then I think
Yes.
you mentioned earlier talking about, you get tired of being on the road. There's so much, there's downtime, and you're hanging out with the same guys, and it's hard to sleep. A lot of bands, that's where they turn to drugs and alcohol. Was that ever something? And I don't know how much you can, but was that ever a concern for you, or any of the projects that you were in? Because that's killed a lot of our favorite bands over the years.
Um, yeah, it would be concerning, because what happens, it's easy to fall into that trap because you got to remember when Brighton Rock, we were playing 5, 6 nights a week, every week, year after year. And when you get off stage, you have so much adrenaline. It's such a high, and everybody's high fiving you, and everybody wants to party with you. You guys are great. So it's a celebration. And we get the bigger you get, the more your rider or backstage becomes. So you got tons of free booze and bottles of this and that. And next thing you know, you're just drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. And a lot of the times, because we weren't humongous in Canada, and because Canada is such a big country in size, we'd finish a gig and then literally have to that night drive to the next city because the
Sure.
next one's like 12 hours away and you're on stage that next, so we have to go all night long.
Right.
So, whether it's a band, a van or, whatever, small bus or, we toured. Only time we had a tour bus was all when we toured all through the states where we can actually sleep in bunks, but we never really had that in Canada because we wanted to make more money, so we
Right.
could put it towards everything else because you have to pay for that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that so then you have different time zones, stuff like that. So you're in a constant fog all the time.
Yeah.
After a while, after a few years, it's like wow, you're in a daze,
Right.
and you don't know what time it will. That's why the people like they forget what city they're in and stuff like that. I know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
You literally don't know what city you're in. Like, where are we again? Okay, you literally don't know. And yeah, so yeah, it became a concern. That
Sure.
wasn't the reason we broke up, but
No. No.
but I could see why bands fall into that trap
Yeah.
because it's an easy escape. It's like I can't deal with this. Let's just get loaded and forget about everything, right? But
I need some
we were
energy to get up for the show tonight, and like
yeah,
we've been driving all night, and hey, if you take a little bit of this, you'll be sky high for the show. I mean, I've had my own issues in the past, so I mean, I can relate to that.
yeah. We weren't that bad compared to other bands that we would witness. It's like, oh my God, like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, Jesus, like,
Right.
and because like myself personally, I wanted to make great music, and I was so consumed with that. And then when I found that there was periods of time where I wasn't being creative anymore, I would start to get hard on myself and down on myself, and
Right.
so I tried to be alert as much as I can. I tried to be writing on the bus and stuff like that, and the vans and stuff like that. And so that was more of a concern to me. But yeah, it takes a toll. I mean, not even just the alcohol and stuff like that. It's just the constant on the go where you don't, people take for granted when you have a 9 to 5 job, right? You get home at a certain time, you eat at a certain time, you go to bed at a certain time, and you wake up at a certain time. So there's a routine. Your body adjusts to that.
Yep.
When you're on the road, your body's it doesn't adjust to it because you're like I mentioned, you have different time zones. You're driving all night where you should be properly in bed. You're not. You're up all night. My turn to drive. Your turn. We'd hire drivers and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's tough. And like I mentioned, it's not for everybody. That's why a lot of bands break up because
Right.
they can't take the road anymore. It's yeah, but I wouldn't change a thing. The best years of my life, that's for
Good.
sure.
And this might even be sacrilege to even mention it, but with Jerry's passing, has there ever been talk of, hey, you know what, maybe as a tribute to Jerry, getting another vocalist and doing some shows as Brighton Rock? Has that ever been a consideration, or is it no, Jerry's gone, so Brighton Rock is no more?
Yeah, Brighton Rock's no more. I
Okay.
mean, there's nobody that can replace Gerry. I
Sure.
mean, there's just nobody can sing like that.
Right.
People, if you listen to some of those records, anybody that's a singer out there, he's hitting high E's.
Oh, insane.
And that's not falsetto, that's his real voice.
Yeah.
And with power, like he's doing it with full power.
Right.
So there's not too many guys that could sing like that. I mean,
Right.
the only person I could see singing like that, there's a girl. They were a big Canadian band called the Headpins.
Yes, I know the
Eh,
headpins.
Okay, and the singer's name is Darby
That's
Mills.
right.
Yes, she could sing that because she's a great raspy voice. She can hit the high notes,
Yep.
but it's not Brighton Rock.
Right.
You know, Gerry, just look over and be playing a Brighton Rock concert and not seeing Gerry.
Yep.
It just because people were, saying, "Well, get Pat, you're a singer of Storm Force. He can do it."
Sure.
Like we actually, Storm Force, when we do play live, we play we play about three Brighton Rock songs live. We play "We Came to Rock" and "Hanging High and Dries," "Can't Stop the Earth and Shake" and stuff like that. So we do Brighton Rock, but
Sure.
no, we could never do it without him. I mean, I don't want to put us in the same, you know, uh, stratosphere as Led Zeppelin, but when Bonham left, they said that's it.
Yep. Yep.
And then and they stuck to it. They did the odd show, like reunion show, but there's no way they're going to tour as Led Zeppelin, even though they always keep dragging it up. Oh yeah, Led Zeppelin's going to tour. No, no, they're not. They're not.
Right.
And that's the way we feel with Gerry. No, he was our guy, and that's we ended on a high note, and that's the way we're going to keep it.
Okay, awesome. Next year is the 40th anniversary of the release of Young, Wild, and Free. Perfect. I don't. Is there any, talk? I mean, that's the thing now is like, hey, here's the vinyl reissue. Maybe here's the box set with the extra tracks. Is there talk of anything going on with Brighton Rock as far as that with the old material?
uh, no, there is no talk. I hate to say that.
Sure.
No, there's nobody really, like, we don't have management anymore. Nobody really out there fighting for the band, saying, "Hey, let's do this. Let's do a box set." Like, my sole concern right now is the Storm Force,
Yep.
and so I'm consumed with that all the time. So when you say, this is going to be the 40th anniversary, it's like, oh yeah, you're right, but it doesn't. Other than that, I don't really give it too much thought.
Sure.
It'd be great if somebody took the ball and ran with it and go, "Hey, let's do this and do that," and we do a commemorative concert. I thought maybe we could do like a tribute concert to Gerry and have different singers come in and
Absolutely.
just for fun. But
Sure.
that's a huge undertaking. If somebody wants to take that ball, get a hold of me, but I
Right.
can't do it.
Sure.
I can't do it. And the other guys are the same way.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, Gerry was that's what he was great for. He was making things like that happen.
Right.
And I was always concentrating on writing all the songs and all the vocal melodies and stuff like that. And Gerry was good at getting that kind of stuff going. But without Gerry, it's I don't know, it's tough. And without him here, it's kind of sad, that he wouldn't be a part of this 40th anniversary,
Right.
So, but you never know.
Yeah.
If the guru wants to take the ball and go for it, we'll behind you.
I would love to. And speaking of that, are there any is there unreleased Brighton Rock music? And in fact, I'll just even bring up a specific song. There was a song called Gang Bang that was going to be on Love Machine, and I think it got pulled off because maybe they were worried about the lyrical Is there any unreleased music that if somebody did come take the ball by the horns, or the bull by the horns, excuse me, that could go into a box set and hey, here's 3 or 4 unreleased Brighton Rock tracks?
Well, Gang Bang you can see on YouTube. It has been released on YouTube.
Yep.
But no, we were the type of band. I heard Alex Lifeson talk about this with Rush. When they would make a record, they would basically have like maybe 12 songs going in. Some bands have 20 or 30, and they go in and they start banging them off and start narrowing them down. We knew what the songs were going to be. So out of these 12, we're going to take 10 of these songs. So, in the when we start writing the record, I'd come up with riffs and stuff like that. And you'd see which guys in the band would latch onto it. And then certain songs, everybody, that's the one. So there was never really leftover songs, hardly ever.
Okay.
We whatever you heard, other than when we tried to release make that new record in 2013, we had about 5 or 6 songs, but none of them were finished. I mean, I don't think Gerry sang one complete song all the way through. I think he had lyrics for a bunch of them. So that's a shame because if he would have, we could have maybe went in and salvaged a song or two, but that never happened. So unfortunately, the answer is no.
Okay. Greg, you've been so awesome. You're like the definition of Canadian nice. I can just like you're such a cool guy.
Oh, thanks,
you're,
man.
I appreciate you taking the time. We're looking forward to Storm Force coming out. Somebody that is associated with Brighton Rock or has some pull with Canadian record company. Let's get some reissues of the old Brighton Rock material. So excited to hear the new version of Savior, the old Phrase Gang song. So Greg from Brighton Rock, Phrase Gang, Storm Force. It has been just a blast chatting with you.
Thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and gladly do this again when the new Stormforce record is out. The first record is on Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff, and we got a bunch of videos on YouTube. You want to check that out? We have a website, stormforce.ca. Thanks a lot, man. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely, and we'll keep in touch. When the new Storm Force comes out, maybe we'll do this again. Until then, man, I'm rooting for you, and thank you again.
Okay.
All right, take care. All right, yeah,
Packers.
okay, okay. Jeez, no thanks. All right, take care, Greg.
Thanks, brother.